Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show, and we're about ready to begin.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned for the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, Sweet Hope, Chicago. 224 446. Come on, baby, now get your business fixed. Come on.
Hi there, I'm the real Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at ntnm.org. The last 6.5 years of the show are on YouTube. You can check them out. Click on the pictures on the NTNM site. It'll follow you through to the links to see everything on YouTube. Also, for those of you that don't realize, we're on in Chicago every Thursday at 7:30 p.m., Friday at 2:30 p.m. on Channel 19. In Evanston, we're on Tuesdays at 10 p.m., Thursdays at 8 p.m. on Channel 6, and in 35 North and Northwest suburbs, we're on either channels 19 or 35 Mondays at 6 p.m. Community policing, CAPS may be dead, which is a technicality, but community policing in the 24th District is still alive thanks to a willing commander and a willing police department and a healthy community interest in it. If you go to caps24.org, you will find all the meetings for the 24th District, which is West Rogers Park, and a little bit of Edgewater. It is a pleasure to introduce you to the Alderman of the Second Ward and one of the few truly independent and intelligent voices in the City Council. There are plenty of intelligent voices, but not all of them are independent, and to put it mildly, and I guess vice versa too. No, there aren't that many independents. We're talking about Alderman Bob Fioretti. How you doing?
Thank you, sir. Great to be here.
Thank you, and I'm so glad you were able to make it. And I want to thank Kelly Turan, who's no longer working with you, but she helped make arrangements, and Angie, and I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
We'll just leave it as Angie. It's easier.
Okay.
Right.
And you're Italian, too.
Right, I know, but like I said, it's easier.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister, but thanks, Angie. I appreciate it. So the Second Ward, basically, you're kind of a gerrymandered entity.
Well, that's what they want us to believe.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is the remap does not take effect until 2015. So,
oh, interesting. I didn't realize that.
And there's a Corporation Council opinion, I believe, issued on February 12th of 2012 that specifically says it doesn't take effect until 2015 election. When the mayor appointed the replacement for Sandy Jackson a month ago, it was for the old boundaries, not the new boundaries.
Interesting.
And so you got to watch where somebody has their hand in whose pocket and what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating to the voters. I think there's a lot of issues about the map. I've heard some stories out there now that people may want to litigate it now that it's trying to be implemented a little too early, but we'll see what happens in the future. But for all practical purposes, the Corporation Council's opinion is the same as it has been for all the other prior opinions, that it does not take effect until the next election. We do not have a carryover mechanism to allow a transfer easing in of the new type of ward boundaries.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. I do know that
neither did a few of my colleagues, and neither did a lot of the people that they're trying to convince otherwise.
So somebody could actually be making a service call in the wrong ward.
Right. And quite frankly, how do you, it becomes, de facto or de jure representation, and nobody's elected anybody in those areas that they are claiming to represent the people now. So that's the problem that we're faced with.
That's interesting. You know what, I wanted to ask you, because one of the things, it was always like the individual ward that controlled the sanitation, and right now they're doing things more by grid. Has that had any real effect on you and the people in your area?
Well, not really. And you may recall that in December of '09, I did propose a grid system. And at that time, I said, I think a grid is a much more healthier way to pick up garbage. Why should they not be able to pick up across the street? What are the boundaries that allow it? However, the type of grid system that they have, I think, is counterproductive. I still believe we should put this city into about 10 grids with the central business district its own, so about 11 grids. Because everybody across this city should demand the highest services, and they should receive the highest of services, whether it's snow removal out there, whether it's garbage pickup, whether it's making sure you have non-bumpy roads out there that are filled with potholes, whether you have a good lighting system. But we in this city don't know how much it would cost to replace all that. Now, by giving it to professionals and not the aldermen, because why are the aldermen concerned about, if you had 50 aldermen walking down the street, I bet you one may say, oh, well, this light pole has a problem. Another one may say, oh, this curb's broken. Another one may say, oh, there's a pothole. The other 47 may not say anything at all. See, that's the problems that we have. And we need the professionals to be engaged on every inch of our streets, our lighting structure, our alleys. And I think it's too, I'm not going to downplay my colleagues' abilities, but it's sometimes too much for the alderman to be undertaking.
By the way, I agree, and in my ward we have a novice alderman in 50, and it's funny because we had a picture taken with her and Emmanuel in front of the new blue carts. But I was thinking that I'd rather stand her up in a black cart than a blue cart.
Stand her up or stand her on it?
Either.
And the blue cart system has been one of those that is going to happen finally, but at the same time, we got to educate our consumers and all of our taxpayers and everybody that uses them that what has to go into the blue carts. I found by going into the other wards and talking to the residents a couple of years ago that they weren't sure what they should be dumping in the blue carts. And so often everything goes in there. So we've got to be very careful, but I think the blue cart system we should be making money off of. It happens in other cities. The recyclable material generates revenue. And we should, at the end of this, I want to see how many millions that we're getting back off of our blue cart system. It should be a moneymaker for the city and less taxing on the people of this city.
No, that would be nice. You're definitely generating stuff. It's funny because when I asked about, last time I asked anybody about recycling on the show was almost 20 years ago. And I was asking simple questions like, should you wash out the milk bottle before you put it in the recycling bin?
Right, exactly.
So,
and what was the answer? Because I'm always wondering that one.
Oh, by the way, what he said was it would probably be a good thing to do.
Yeah, I would assume so too. I would assume so too.
But you never know about these things. And then there's the, you hear the horror stories like, what if you accidentally leave something in there, something sharp or jagged or whatever? So. But I have to imagine, I don't know if they're sorted by hand. I have no idea how that stuff works.
Well, I think once it gets picked up and how it gets dropped off, care is always, as they sort that, is always predominant in terms of the employees and those that are going to be handling the recycling materials. So whichever way it goes, it will be recycled properly.
Yeah, you know what? I do have a friend who's a sanitation guy with the city. And, it's well, I don't want to get him in any trouble. I better not say anything. But he was telling me that, these guys will actually, when they're rummaging through the garbage, they'll actually look to see if there's anything valuable over there.
Well, I think if some people were out there in the various locations that we dump our garbages, you would find a lot of valuable items. People inadvertently throw them out, misplaced, and so we do hear that. And somebody, after the garbage has been picked up, that, oh no, I threw out a jewelry box. And then we try to see whatever we can do. Or an expensive watch that got thrown out.
Wow.
So, always a problem.
Yeah, there's still a bunch of topics I want, that we're talking about before I want to get to. Let me ask you about the parking meter situation.
I've heard of them.
You know, I've got to imagine, well, your ward basically, you know, it kind of snakes around downtown.
Yes.
Meters, and I would imagine on the higher end. What kind of effect is it having on business?
Oh, I'm looking at the small businesses to the big businesses, and I think it's impacting in a negative way. I've in the last 90 days taken a look at the agreement. I know there was a court case. It's going up on appeal. It was after a lot of confusion in terms of what the judge ruled, and I did read the transcript of his ruling that he issued. I think it was beginning of December, end of November, and it was a very confusing answer to whether we could do that, whether the city could do that. I think it's having clearly a negative impact on them. It's having a negative impact on the tow zones and loading zones that businesses used to have. And so, or street festivals too. All of those are being impacted by the use of the parking meters.
Interesting. And one of the things that strikes me is that I was taking a look at what the banks or wherever the meter corporations running the meters are these days, and they were according to the contract wanting money back for the street closure or this particular thing, and it seemed to me that over the course of the contract, the payback from the city could actually outweigh the amount of money that the corporation is paying for the parking in the first place.
Well, I have to tell you, the parking meter decision was a tough decision. We, the council, knew that it was being bid out for quite a while. I've looked at the contract, and it's a fairly hefty contract a couple of Sundays ago. I reread it through. Tried to read it in December. I think I voted for it, I have to say that. But I think we were misled in the vote. I was misled. I asked specific questions in my one-on-one briefing, and I got answers that were contrary to what we were told. When I was on the floor, I questioned whether or not we could give the city's police power to a third party, and whether the city could do that to allow someone else, an independent entity, to police our streets, and that's what we essentially did. I also said at the time that if we spend all the money in a year or 2 years, I can't remember which one I said, I would be voting against this. Well, we spent it in 2 years. We were clearly misled. That money should have been there in the various funds for the length and the duration of this contract, which goes on for quite a long time.
Yeah,
we will not be here, and a lot of others won't be here.
Yeah, 70. I think there's 70 years to go right now, something like that. You know what? You were talking before about mortgages and the housing problems and all the rest of it in Chicago. So, would you like to illuminate us?
As we talk about it, in 07, I voted against the budget, and I was worried because it had tax increases. And I thought tax increases really lead to forms of foreclosure. And at that time, the foreclosure, in that November when we voted for the budget of 07, the foreclosure crisis was starting to heat up. In all of 06, we had about 10,500 foreclosures. But by mid-07, we had over 14,000. And I pointed out some of our communities, some of our wards in my speech, and that were getting hit hard. And I remember the aldermen, they were shaking their heads. Yes, they knew about it. They felt it. Well, we think that it's all been dying down. But I've looked at some of the same wards now, as I did in 07. And now all of a sudden they're having increases in foreclosures. And we had just last year alone, 18,660, excuse me, in 11, we had 18,668. Last year, when things slowed down a bit, we had 18,407 foreclosure filings across the city. But in wards on the south side and on the west side, we find an increase again. And that doesn't mean it's happening throughout all the city, but I think the effect is that we're having it throughout the city. If we hit 18,000 again, if we hit 20,000, I think we're going to have a difficult problem here in the city managing our budget because of vacancies, people living in the city. There are two ways that people vote, one at the ballot box and one with their feet. And the last 10 years in this city demonstrated people vote with their feet. We lost 200,000 people in our population census.
Yeah, I saw that. That's significant.
You know, and over 180,000 African Americans left the city. I believe it was about 25,000 Caucasians left the city, and we had an increase of 25,000 Latinos. So all that impacts on where we go as a city to make those global connections that we need to make this a vibrant city. I am a cheerleader for this city. I love this city. I know you do.
Sure do.
I mean, we got some of the best transportation systems in the world: air, rail, sea. The use of Lake Michigan, they come up. We've got some of the best cultural events. There's baseball teams called the Cubs and the Sox that have been in a rivalry. Look at our basketball, our football. We got some of the best universities.
Oh, we got to mention hockey this year.
The hockey team is unbelievable right now. And you know, as we get into these kind of matters, and we got the best museums. We've got so much culture in this city, but the problem has been that we haven't been able to bring all of our citizens interlocking into all of that, into our infrastructure, into our culture, into our baseball, our football, all of our sports activities, and into our universities. So that's the challenge that we have as cheerleaders for the city of Chicago. How we globalize our city, at the same time bringing in everybody in this city to participate in what happens here.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff going on. And you know, if people can't afford it, you know, there are free periods at some of the museums, and there are PSs that the libraries have that they can issue. So, you know, I have to tell you, I don't go to the museum. Usually it's when somebody comes in from out of town that I wind up hitting the museums because I want to show them. But you know what? I enjoy it probably more than they do.
Oh, I absolutely. Yesterday, I was talking to an individual about our museums on the lake, and what we see as we walk in is just a fraction of what they have in storage. I've been fortunate enough to walk through the storage areas, and it truly is like that last scene in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first one, where they're wheeling in one of the items, and all those items are there, and that's what our museums have. And as they switch things out, and we've also been fortunate, though, in the Second Ward to have our principals' breakfasts at the museums. They've been establishing ambassador programs with our schools. They bring items out to our schools, and they make sure that they have our kids join in, because it's a great way to educate, great way to inspire and our kids, and through our museums, through the planetarium, the Shed Aquarium, both of the field and the Museum of Science and Industry, and all the other museums that we have here in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, there's a ton of them, and you know, most of them really have a lot going for them. I mean, a lot going for them.
I know. I've gone a couple of times in the last few years down to the DuSable Museum, and they've always had a lot of fluctuating exhibits, different types of exhibits, not fluctuating. And it's always been very, what's the best word to say? It brings in the history of who we are. And I say that because I'm looking at a book I've got here. I brought a couple books to talk about.
Sure.
One is Succeeding Against Odds. Right. I was going to say, where's that "the" in there? Right? But and it's the biography of John H. Johnson, who Johnson Publishing, and how he established it and set it up.
Yeah, that's Ebony and Jet and.
Yes, you got them all of it. And there's a lot of great names in here. I just started reading it the other day. I'm not quite halfway through. I'm going to start the next chapter, "The Secret of My Success," which is his 17th chapter in here. but it's absolutely amazing. You know, our government decided I brought in a collection from the first day of issue ceremony on his, that they gave him a stamp a year ago in January 31st, 2012. And it was a great ceremony on it, and it's a great forerunner from somebody that had not only effect here in the city of Chicago, but nationwide on his impact. There's pictures with him with various presidents, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, all the folks. He runs the whole gamut here.
Yeah, he was quite an upright. You know, it's funny, I haven't thought about, until I said Jet, I hadn't thought about that for years. People used to actually go from subway car to subway car.
Yeah.
Selling them.
I know that's what this chapter is all about. That's exactly what he did.
And that's major effort. I mean, to organize something like that, that's a big deal, not a little deal.
No, absolutely.
So I give him all the credit in the world.
Yeah, and it was amazing. I mean, he borrowed $500 from his mother, and that's what started the whole thing. And it was... I think it took him weeks to convince his mother, because she had just bought this new set of furniture throughout the house, and they had to use that as collateral, the $500 with the bank. So, and that's how he built the empire.
That's amazing. Boy, I wish I could have started a paper for $500.
Yeah, now everything's on the internet, so we're not sure who.
That's not even fun. Oh, have you seen this DNA info?
Oh, yes.
News site? That's the Ricketts family. I mean, they really have pockets. Having been, for those who don't know, I've been a publisher for a long time myself, and I've always understood that the best way to become a well-to-do publisher is start out filthy rich.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know what? If he's willing to accept the losses until they can figure out, and he can afford it, he's got an awful lot of really good professional reporting going on there.
Yes, he does.
And a lot of the other things, like some of these AOL sites and all the rest of it, they're very iffy in their character, to put it mildly. And a lot of these sites just pop up, and then they pop back away.
Right.
So. Yeah, I have no idea where all that's going.
And I was just in their, I'll call it work area, but they have a studio in there too. And so they film a lot of, I'll call it news stories that much more extensive, a couple-minute interview on the topic of the day. So it's interesting to watch. DNA Info is here, I believe, in New York, and maybe in another city. I don't know yet.
All I know is from the website, I know there's in New York and in Chicago.
Okay, then you're confirming what I believe.
And actually, I counted 26 paid editorial employees, but I'm not sure if they're all in Chicago or New York. But it's actually professionally written. Well, one thing for sure, there's never a shortage of quality journalists, but there's a major quality of jobs.
Yes, exactly.
Major shortage of jobs. And
well, in the last 24 hours, they covered a story that I was involved in on closing down a bad liquor store. We had about 70 people there today, and they had a reporter. And then last night at the school closing hearings that affect the West Side.
I want to talk about that too.
So, we talk about the foreclosure crisis that's hitting the school closings. I mean, school planning and where schools are is the landmarks of urban planning. If we have, and last night I talked about it specifically, that where we put our schools, it's the type of communities that we want. Once you close a school, it's open space, it's green space. Once it's closed, it's gone forever. And that public space depresses the value of our community even further. And that impacts on all the homes around. A couple of years ago, in 2009 and 2010, I started driving in every ward to see things, and we went to, we didn't hit all 600 plus schools that we had, but we went to about 400 locations where schools were. And those that were closed, you can tell the impact of the surrounding area. It's just like when you close a police station. It's it was a police station out there, and now it's boarded up. And it creates a negative effect on the psyche of the community. If not on the actual property values of the community.
Yeah, no, it does definitely have an effect. And, well, the funny thing is, I shouldn't say the funny thing, it's very cyclical, because for a while, this place, I mean, they used to have like a Boone School, which is less than a quarter block away from me. people my age were sitting in classes of 48 people with high academic achievement. And, there were schools all over the place. Then the community became older, there were less children. The schools were closing down, they were sold off to private entities, whether it be churches or for private schools. And then all of a sudden you had no space and you needed another school.
Right.
And it took about 15 or 20 years to be able to get another place to alleviate the crowding here. But by the same token, let me ask you, one of the things that what they did is they added on to the local schools here. I would think that when you have a grammar school bigger over and above a point, it's very hard to manage the school, both from a principal standpoint and a teacher standpoint. I would think it would be easier to control a school with 600 kids than about 1,500 kids.
I think you're right too. And in fact, the amount of resources that have to go into it, it is very problematic in terms of, the board can beat their chest and say they're going to be $1 billion in debt. We understand that, but it was a lack of proper planning. I mean, just the other day, the mayor decided to go full-time kindergarten. And where's he going to find the $15 million to fund it? He's going to cut the jobs at the central office. Those should have been cut a long time ago.
Agreed. I mean, the truth is, you have to have some supervision, but the real deal is the teacher and the kid, and if a good teacher will be able to teach those kids what they need to do without, I would think if anything, all the middle administration, upper administration get in the way.
Well, I've said, and yeah, not only the teacher, the parent teacher, but you need the teacher acting as, and I should have said, as I said, parent teacher. It sounds like we bring in that concept of parents patria, and where the government becomes the parent. And it's a term that was used, I think, more, several centuries ago. But you look at it, we need parent involvement. We don't have enough parent involvement. But by going to these school closings, you see these parents out there that are advocating for their kids on why not to close a school, what their kids need. And all of a sudden I've got a newfound respect for what's happening in our communities. I've always had it, I believed it. But at the same time, we've got problems with families that, we have 16-year-olds having children. And we've got to educate our teenagers, our young folks in their early 20s about do you have a job, how you need to have a job. And sometimes it's tough to roll up our sleeves because the best education starts at the doorway of the house. I've said that for the last 5 years, 6 years since I've been in office. And it's the parents that make the difference in the lives. I mean, when we were growing up, if we were even thinking about doing something wrong, it would seem like our mother or father was already right there before we did it, and we'd get a good kick in the butt.
Big time. And even more than that too, I grew up in South Shore, but the neighbors all cared about each other in those days. And if an adult told you no, if your parents weren't around, it meant something. It actually scared the bad guys.
Right, exactly. Absolutely, absolutely. So...
Well, 1 minute warning. We've been, the time.
Well, we're over? I better come back right away.
For 27 minutes. By the way, you're more than invited to come back as often as you like.
Definitely. Love to.
So anyway, I want to thank you very much, Alderman Bob Fioretti. I want to thank Kelly and Angie. You do have 63 seconds if you'd like to make one last pitch for something.
We've got a lot going on. I believe on April 20th, we're having the second ward, both the new and the old under the remap, clean and green. And we've had anywhere from 400 to 600 people be involved in cleaning up our neighborhoods. I hope everybody, no matter where they are, helps clean up your neighborhood because it shows your pride and respect that you have in the neighborhood. So join us, but not just on that day, but every day of the year.
That sounds good. I'm sure you have some sort of website that people can check out.
A new one, it's called bobfioretti.com. Pretty easy. And sometimes, the last name is FIORETTI.com, and they can find a lot of things there.
Very cool. I want to thank you very much, and we look forward to having more intelligent conversations with you, over the next few years.
Sounds
great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
sir.